What's up, fight fans? Welcome back to Sportskeeda MMA news. Sean O'Malley revisits an interaction with a buzzed-up Conor McGregor. Brendan Schaub backs Adesanya and slams Chris Pratt. Chael Sonnen can see John Cena just fine, attacks him on Twitter. Daniel Cormier stands up for Adesanya following a lackluster UFC 276 main event. Michael Chiesa discusses the UFC's biggest liability. Find out what he said on this episode of Sportskeeda MMA News. We've seen it in the build-up to a Khabib fight. We've seen it after the Mayweather bout, but O'Malley saw a buzzed Conor McGregor at a Cowboys game. Now, is Sugar hanging out with Conor McGregor every weekend, having barbecues together and playing golf better than Daniel Cormier? Sorry to paint that best friend picture, but the answer is no, they don't hang out. In fact, O'Malley has only interacted with McGregor in person once. When he met the Irish superstar, Conor must have been high on his own supply of Proper 12 because he was a touch on the tipsy side per Sugar. When Sean was recently on the Pivot podcast, he admitted,
I've only had one conversation with him. He was buzzed up. He was pretty buzzed up.
McGregor has been known to enjoy a drink, or many, time and again. Couple that with his thick Irish accent and it makes for a conversation that O'Malley is barely a part of. He couldn't quite make out what Conor was saying, but that won't ward off O'Malley from hanging out with him again.
I'd love to hop on his Lamborghini and get buzzed up with him.
Do you think you could have translated Conor's buzzed Irish accent for O'Malley? Let us know in the comments. You might be needed on that boat trip. Leave it to Star-Lord to take things a bit too far. Chris Pratt, along with many other celebrities, was in attendance for International Fight Week's marquee fight, Israel Adesanya taking on Jared Cannonier. Despite UFC 276 as a whole being incredible, the main event was rather underwhelming, to put it lightly. Chris Pratt didn't think that Adesanya's performance matched the hype of his statements leading up to the fight and the walkout, which were all pretty exciting. Pratt said this at the UFC post-show.
I'm not a fan, man. I'm not a fan of coming out like all that talk and then just kind of putting on a little bit of a pitter patter. I'm like, come on, man, get cash on that. You gotta cash that promise, of being so badass. And
Brendan Schaub is having none of it. He's not necessarily saying that the fight was great, but stated that the actor doesn't have the credentials to discuss such a matter. On the Schaub show, the former UFC heavyweight said,
and I know what's his name, Pratt, the guy in Chris Pratt was like, for me, I'm disappointed because if you don't talk all that you got to show out, you got to do that. Hey, bro, we're not telling you how to make Guardians of the Galaxy. That's like Izzy criticizing Guardians of the Galaxy going, I think Gru talks too much. Pratt would be like, what the fuck do you know about movies? This is the first time you're on a national broadcast for the UFC and you take this opportunity to clown our boy Izzy?
What Schaub is saying, essentially, Chris, is to stick to your roots. Is it fair for Chris Pratt to say that about Adesanya? While many people can't see John Cena, Chael Sonnen isn't your typical man. I mean, he has a tenth more testosterone than the average male, even on a low day. Not only can Sonnen see Cena, but he has the WWE superstar in his Twitteral crosshairs. John Cena has been a great source of motivation on the internet. He recently took to Twitter to uplift some online passerbys with a tweet that said, "Onward doesn't always have to be forward. Onward can mean accepting and processing setbacks, working through them, absorbing the lesson they yield. Onward." Wow, that's very thought-provoking and uplifting, right? Chael Sonnen's response was as abrupt as a stone-cold surprise entrance. The bad guy lived up to his nickname and rained on this wholesome tweet of Cena's. Sonnen replied with a stark contradiction and said, no, it definitely does mean forward. You're poking holes, Uncle Chael. It's okay though, you make the internet a better place. Subscribe doesn't always mean pressing a button, sometimes it means just being here for the ride. Kidding. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and support the channel. If the enemy of one's enemy is one's friend, then it's safe to say that John Jones has played best friend matchmaker for Daniel Cormier and Israel Adesanya. While we can't verify whether or not Cormier and Adesanya are hanging out like O'Malley hopes to hang out with McGregor, Cormier is very candid about how he sees fights play out, especially ones involving champions. Adesanya has definitely looked better in other fights, but there are so many variables when it comes to MMA. It's tough to tell whether it was a rough night, a tough fight, all of the above, or anything else. While it was very risky for Adesanya and Cannonier to try to make the fight more fan-friendly. DC thinks that the onus was on Cannonier to make the fight more exciting, seeing as how he was losing the fight anyways. When discussing the UFC 276 main event on DC and RC, Cormier said this.
So many people have said this, and it gets a bit cliche, but it takes two to tango. If Jared Cannonier is going to cruise to a loss, how is it Izzy's responsibility to do more?
Cormier acknowledged that Jared had his moments, but he couldn't keep that momentum going.
Now, I thought Cannonier early had some moments, but they just weren't sustained. He could not get it going to a level or to a degree that could truly challenge Adesanya. Adesanya is one of the most talented counter-strikers in the business. So you got to be very guarded with your engagements, because if you don't, you end up like Paulo Costa, Robert Whittaker in the first fight.
Regardless of his bland performance, fans are sure to tune into Izzy's next fight. For one, he's can't miss TV despite the Jared fight. Secondly, he's expected to take on Alex Pereira, a fighter who's beaten him twice in kickboxing and an athlete who's sure to bring the dog out of Adesanya. Do you agree with Daniel Cormier here? Let us know if you think he's right or not in the comments. Sean Strickland is many things, but predictable on the microphone is antonymous with the middleweight standout. He's brash, outspoken, and for the most part can back it up against the best fighters in the world. Despite coming off of a loss to Alex Pereira in a title eliminator bout, pundits of the sport are still entertaining the thought of him versus Adesanya. Strickland berated the middleweight champion at the UFC 276 pre-fight press conference. He respects the champ, but doesn't approve of his nails or his alleged fascination with hentai. Michael Chiesa and Paul Felder discussed what another press conference involving these two would be like. Maverick said this about Strickland.
Sean Strickland is the biggest liability for the company when he gets on the microphone. You just don't know what he's going to say. So I'm thinking to myself, like, if the MMA gods start dropping lightning bolts on the UFC's plans and just burn it down, like, Sean Strickland in a title fight with Israel Adesanya would be like, oh man, I don't think it would not be a good thing.
Strickland's fighting style dichotomizes his social media posts and time on the mic, though he's very outspoken and a bit out there. He fights fairly cool, calm, and collected. How do you see a possible Adesanya versus Strickland fight going down? Does Izzy win? Does Sean score the upset? Does the fight not happen because Strickland says something controversial and gets the UFC pulled from all media outlets? That about does it for Sportskeeda MMA news. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already and follow us on your favorite social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. Until next time. Here are some of the comments from previous videos. Watch Izzy turn into a wrestler when he fights Pereira. Is he gonna get slept so bad? LMAO. If you like this video, please like, comment, and share. Your comments could be featured in the next Sportskeeda MMA news video. We always deliver daily content, so make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything going on in the MMA world. For updates, quotes, and exclusive interviews from all your favorite fighters, follow Sportskeeda MMA on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for tuning in.